It's a time for a package from China, but not your typical package from China. It's Super Console X time, the Super Console X Arcade Edition. Hey, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in. So in today's video we are going to take a close look at the new arcade version of the Super Console X lineup. The Super Console X is a lineup of basically Android boxes that they modified in combination with Emuelec. And in combination with this you can just play all kinds of retro emulation. It's absolutely crazy, but what's even more crazy, with the new model it seems to be, or they are claiming, that we have more stuff to play now. On the box you can see we're having the game console and the stick. But it seems to be they're also having just an arcade stick that you can plug in the other one, so you have a two-player configuration. The previous arcade stick was a very cool novelty, but the unfortunate part was that it came with very old specifications when it comes to the hardware itself. So what I understand of this is running on the S905X3 chip. It's not the most powerful one, but it will give us more options, especially when it comes to Emuelec. It also has an Android box on the inside. I'm not going to look at it, I just want to mainly focus this unboxing review for the stuff that we're going to get on the inside, and especially the hardware. Another thing that you're going to get in the box is an adapter, an HDMI cable, everything that you're just going to need if you want to plug this thing in. We're going to get ourselves an SD card. And 64, what is this? Oh, 4 GB, and this explains, it comes with some videos, just you need to pop it in your computer if you have any questions how you need to add games. All the information is nowadays on an SD card, but let's get this thing out of the box. But this is basically what we're going to get inside the box itself. Let's take a close look at the manual. And the manual is a very nice unfoldable toilet paper deluxe manual that gives not like a lot of explanations. You know, QR code, you need to scan it to get more information whatsoever. What they do is having the option to have some cool things like turbo function, but that is something you need to check out later on. You can also switch method, corresponding keys, everything that you need to know about this is on here. It's very limited, it's mainly about the product itself or the hardware part. Sometimes you add the Emuelec manual that explains everything, but I already mentioned that is on the SD card now. There are two different colors out there, a completely back version and this 8-bit clone, or better said Famicom layout. I think it's pretty damn cool. We're having all the necessary buttons for playing every single game when it comes to arcade. Then having the joystick over here. The joystick is just a typical Chinese long travel joystick, nothing very special. And then of course we're having the buttons. The buttons are your typical, let's say, Chinese long travel cheap buttons. Beside that, nothing bad of course, and here we're having all of the function in combination: turbo, home, mode, select and start. But everything that you're going to need for playing games and emulation, this is just more than enough. So at the back we're going to get ourselves an AV out. It's kind of funny they're still adding this to it. And then having the USB out, HDMI out, then we're having the RE45 input for the power supply and a separate on and off switch. That is very convenient because not every single game box has this. And of course a Type-C connection. And for the Type-C they're also going to give you this extra converter from Type-C to USB 3.0. So with the Super Console Arcade X3, we're just going to get, as I already mentioned at the beginning of this video, the S905X3 comes with 4 GB RAM. The ROM file in total is 32 GB when it comes to the Android box, not going to need it. And then we're going to need a minimum of 5V 3A. It looks like a pretty decent power supply. It does have not a really nice weight to it. It feels kind of plastic. Fantastic. The S905X3 is the new chip that they are using in this new version, but that also means that we're going to get a different Emuelec version. In combination with the HyperMax V8 skin and of course Emuelec 4.5, we're going to get some new cool looks, but also we're going to get ourselves new different things that we can do with it compared with the older Super Console X arcade stick. But the old stuff runs just fine on the older model. Why should you consider getting an S905X3? To be honest, all the way up to PlayStation, and runs just fine on the older but also the new model. PlayStation Portable will not be better in some ways. You cannot really run God of War, we have seen it many times before now. I think when you're looking at some other systems like Sega Dreamcast, we're going to get better performance. So the improvement when it comes to the new Emuelec was going to be more on the background and with some new additional emulators. I think it's a very cool thing, and they should just did that in the first place. That is something I just said to them. It's like the S905X3 should be in the machine at the first time you released it. Because the S905, the old school one they were using and the previous one, was absolutely out of date. For the most people who play old school games it's enough, but if you want to have more power and more stuff like the Sega Saturn, we didn't have the option with the older model. But let's get into the Atomic Wave to begin with. If you're looking at the FPS, but also you can just hear that it does struggle here and there. Unfortunate, this is not a chipset that will run Atomic Wave perfectly every single game, but as we've seen in the previous boxes that we've reviewed here on the channel. But it will stay above the 50 at least. The only thing I have like a mixed feeling when it comes to searching for a game. I really love this wheel at the left side, but it's kind of chaotic when you're looking at all the stuff that's basically happening here on the screen. So is this the best way? I think not. Especially when you're looking at the overall, let's say, experience, if you just want to scroll quickly through the games. Oh boy, this is just going to be a freaking nightmare. Otherwise, like, you have like this very cool logos, but now we're having a screenshot. I find it all like a little bit of messy. But getting into the 16-bit stuff, I just want to quickly show you that it's not going to be any problem whatsoever. We can find the weirdest stuff that you can play actually on an emulation machine. So let's tune in the Sega Saturn, one of the new systems with this new Emuelec 4.5. But when you're looking at the right top corner, you will see that it runs around 40 FPS. It's stable, but when it comes to 3D-dimensional games on Sega Saturn, it's not a very good combination. Okay, so in the next round I just wanted to check out a two-dimensional game on Sega Saturn platform, and here we can see that it runs on 60 FPS. So when it comes to two-dimensional stuff, we have seen it many times before, also with handhelds and stuff like that. Then we're going to get way better performance with the less demanding games. So it's not all bad thing with the S905X3, we can still play a lot of cool things when it comes to Sega Saturn. And if you're like a big fan of shmups like me, oh boy, you're going to have like an absolutely crazy ride. The bummer with these, let's say, images they are creating or just basically like ripping from the internet, they're not perfect. And this is a great example. Pressing select start bring you back to the main menu, but unfortunately I just want to check out some Dead or Alive 2, but that didn't work at all. So let's just get into the next game and just see. I'm hoping that actually works.
Escape from the castle.
Well, let's try a different game. Always trying to find the freaking buttons. But when it comes to the FPS, you can just, it drops down to 55, 40, 40, 54, whatever.
A solid beginning may lead to a perfect ending. Go for it.
But we do got some great emulation going on over here.
Remember, don't miss
Dipping to the 50.
or else you'll be sorry.
But actually when you're going to play the game, I don't really notice it at all. Oh yeah, so there is also no music, so that is not like it's supposed to be. Also that part is completely messed up. Okay, so let's get into Sega Nomi, because I was really curious how Dead or Alive will run on that. And it will dip almost all the way to the 40s. Was as expected, because the chipset is not powerful enough to run it on 60 FPS. Same story with Sega Saturn. It's going to be like running fine if you're going to have some two-dimensional games. But when you're looking at the Super Console X3, it's absolutely way better than the older version. Even some PlayStation Portable games, three-dimensional games, are playable. It still runs on native resolution and the original FPSs. This is running on 30 FPS. Pressing select, we can go into the settings and we can mess around with it here. If you just want to like tweak and just check out if we can make it a little bit better, like let's say upscaling, you can always mess around with it. And they also implemented frame skipping, just want to point it out, to get it at least running with this chipset. So take that into consideration when it comes to PlayStation Portable. The unfortunate thing is that we need to remove all of the rubber pads. Yep, it's going to be a nightmare getting these things back. But let's take a close look in the inside what we're actually going to get with this. Because if you want to replace or upgrade anything, it's not going to be any problem whatsoever. And that is what I really like about these things. At the top part, we're going to get ourselves a basic connection, and you can replace them with a Samba joystick or whatsoever you want to. So that is going to be absolutely great. So replacement of the joystick is no problem whatsoever. Then the joystick is the same story. They did great cable management over here. The cables are all the way going to the encoder board that's implemented in this part of the joystick. We can just replace every single thing and you can just upgrade it if you want to. So at the bottom here we're going to get a very interesting thing, that we're having a metal plate for some extra weight. And it's a little bit of cheating, of course, but on the other side, it's great that they're doing it because it gives the thing so much more stability on your table. Over here, they're having the tiny cable goes from the PCB on the top over there, or the encoder board, and they're having the tiny cable goes to the Type-C port at the back. And here we're having the main board. The main board has now an active fan, absolutely great, and also implemented an extra protection that there are no cables can get into fan itself. So that's absolutely cool. So the main board is kind of the same measurements when you're looking at the previous Super Console X's. They have been attached to the plastic with a couple of screws here and there. And let's get them loose if they want to. So we can remove the main board itself, remove the cable. This also goes to the same PCB, and the inboard, it looks kind of funny. It looks also the same like the ones that came out of the Android boxes or the Super Console first editions. So they did some minor improvement. First of all, the difference is that we're going to get a different configuration, of course, when it comes to the main board itself. But let's get the show on the road and let's remove the fan. You can just easily do that. You can get yourself some tools for it. I think I'm not going to need it. Yep, I'm going to need it. Let's remove these plastics over here. Let's squeeze them, push them through, and then we can just basically like get the fan off and take a close look at the chipset. There we go. At the back we're even going to get some RAM modules over here. Oh, there we go. They didn't go big, a very big, thin thermal pad on there. That's great. Remove the fan. Oh, so this can be replaced if you want to. Here we're going to have ourselves like another set of RAM chips, and indeed the Emuelec S905X3. So that's basically what we're going to get with the main board itself. The Super Console X3 is absolutely a cool product in many ways. It's just a game box inside an arcade stick, plug and play and ready. I think it's very cool, and with Emuelec we're having so many things you can just change out that we're missing with Pandora's boxes or other products. The X3 is a great chip, it has a lot to offer, but of course it's not the best one. If you're looking into the Place Portable N64 or some other system we've tested out, we have seen some, let's say, overall okay performance. I want to thank you all for watching, consider subscribing, hit the little bell, and it would be great to see you in the next video.